When Rosa Alvarez returned to Fresno that warm October afternoon, the air carried the scent of dust and orange blossoms from the orchards lining Highway 99. She'd spent 2 quiet weeks in Bakersfield visiting her cousin, enjoying coffee on a back porch, believing her home was safe, the small bungalow she had bought with 4 decades of work, every wall painted by her own hands. She parked her old Corolla by the curb, stepped out, and smiled faintly at the roses blooming in her front yard. But as she reached the porch and slid her key into the lock, something felt wrong. The metal didn't turn. She tried again, jiggling it gently, then harder. Nothing. Her stomach tightened. She bent closer, staring at the lock. It was new. A shiny brass cylinder she had never seen before. Her hand trembled. No, that can't be right. She knocked. The sound echoed, strangely not like home. Then footsteps approached from inside. The door opened and Monica stood there. Her daughter-in-law's face, once all sweetness and polite smiles, looked different now, composed, almost amused. Her lipstick was perfectly drawn, her posture relaxed. "Rosa," she said softly, the kind of soft that chilled. "You're back earlier than we expected." Rosa blinked, confused. Why doesn't my key work?" Monica's smile widened. A sharp curve that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, we changed the locks. David and I talked about it. You weren't here. And we decided it was time to make some changes." Rosa felt her chest tighten. "What are you talking about? This is my house." Monica leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Our house now," she said evenly. "Things are different." For a moment, the world tilted. Rosa's throat went dry. "Your house." The words barely escaped her lips. From the hallway behind Monica, David appeared, her only son. He stood still, shoulders tense, avoiding her gaze. He looked thinner, older somehow. But what struck Rosa most was the shame flickering in his eyes before he looked away completely. "David," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like." He said nothing, just stared at the floor. A hot pulse of disbelief ran through her. "I worked 40 years for this home," she said, stepping closer. "I cleaned offices, scrubbed bathrooms, worked nights so you'd have a roof over your head. This house is mine. David, it's under my name." Monica's tone turned almost sweet again, falsely gentle. "You don't need to raise your voice, Rosa. We've already talked to someone about the paperwork. It's better this way. You can rest, maybe move somewhere smaller." For a moment, Rosa thought her knees might give out. The house behind Monica, her house, smelled like new paint and coffee that wasn't hers. On the wall, she caught sight of a new picture frame. David and Monica at the coast, smiling. The family photos she had once hung by the staircase were gone, erased. The porch seemed to sway beneath her feet. "Get out of my doorway," she said quietly, her voice trembling not from fear, but something deeper, a breaking point. Monica tilted her head, still smiling. "You should calm down, Rosa. We can talk later." Then she closed the door. The sound of the latch sliding back echoed like a gunshot in Rosa's chest. She stood there on the porch, staring at the door that no longer opened for her, feeling the evening sun burn against her skin. And in that silence, she realized she hadn't just lost her house. She had lost her son. When Rosa was 27, she had already learned that life didn't wait for anyone. The day her husband left, a cold February morning in 1984, he didn't even bother to close the door behind him. One suitcase, a note on the counter, and a silence that rang louder than any argument. David was only 5. He had stood there in his pajamas, clutching a plastic toy truck, asking when his father would be back. Rosa hadn't known how to answer. All she knew was that rent was due in 3 days, her wallet was nearly empty, and there was a child depending on her. She found her first job that same week, cleaning classrooms at Roosevelt Elementary. The pay was meager, but it was something. By sunrise, she'd be pushing her mop down long hallways that smelled of chalk and disinfectant, humming softly so she wouldn't cry. By 9 o'clock, she'd walk to her second job, cleaning offices downtown. The fluorescent lights there made her dizzy, but she learned to move fast to keep her head down, to make floors shine enough for strangers to step on them without noticing the effort. At night, when the world went quiet, she took a third job at a small medical clinic, scrubbing examination tables and restocking supplies until midnight. The chemical smell burned her nose, and her hands cracked from bleach. She'd drive home under the yellow glow of the streetlights, her knuckles stiff on the steering wheel, whispering promises to herself. Just one more year. Just one more. Years passed that way. Her back grew weaker, but her hardened like the calluses on her palms. Every payday, she'd deposit $10 into a savings account that no one else knew about. For our home, she told David whenever he asked why they didn't go to the movies like other families. We'll have something better someday. There were winters when the heater broke and summers when the fan was all they had, but she never let him see her despair. On Sundays, she'd sit with her coffee on the back steps of their tiny rented duplex, drawing floor plans in her notebook, a kitchen with sunlight, a yard with roses, a small room for David to study in peace. Those sketches became her fuel. By the time David turned 20, Rosa had saved $95,000. She could hardly believe it when the bank officer confirmed the number. She wept right there at the counter, trembling with pride and exhaustion. 10 years later, at 45, she finally signed the papers for a small single-story house in West Fresno, beige siding, red roof, and a fig tree in the yard. The price, $180,000, paid in full. No loans, no co-signers, no help from anyone, only her. That house became her sanctuary. Every scratch on the walls, every creak in the floor held a story, of meals cooked after midnight shifts, of birthdays celebrated with homemade cake, of laughter that once filled the kitchen. It was where she watched David grow from a shy boy into a confident man, where she waited anxiously for him to come home from his first job, and later, where she prayed he'd find someone who truly loved him. And now, standing outside that same door decades later, she could still feel those 40 years in her bones. Every bruise, every night spent cleaning someone else's mess so she could build something of her own. The house had been her victory, proof that her sacrifices meant something. But as Monica's voice echoed in her memory, our house now, Rosa felt those decades collapse like dust in her hands. The dream she had worked for, bled for, prayed for, had been stolen by the very people she had given everything to. 3 years earlier, Rosa had believed she was gaining a daughter. David had come over one Sunday, his voice carrying that mix of excitement and hesitation that made her instantly curious. "Mom," he said, smiling shyly, "there's someone I want you to meet." He brought Monica over that afternoon, a young woman with a radiant smile, dark hair neatly tied back, wearing a floral dress that made her look both sweet and confident. She walked into Rosa's modest living room with a bouquet of lilies and said, "You raised an incredible man, Mrs. Alvarez." The words melted something inside Rosa. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Monica was charming from the start, polite, well-spoken, the kind of woman who seemed to know how to fit into any room. She complimented Rosa's cooking, asked about her late husband, and listened to stories about David's childhood as if they mattered. For the first time in years, Rosa felt her small house filled with laughter again. When David announced they were getting married, Rosa didn't hesitate. "It's time he has someone who loves him," she told Patricia, her neighbor. The wedding was small, simple, held at St. Agnes Church. Rosa paid for nearly everything, the catering, the flowers, the photographer, close to $8,000 she had saved over the years for something important. Watching David stand at the altar, eyes bright with happiness, made every dollar worth it. After the ceremony, Rosa handed them a white envelope. Inside were the deed papers to her house, with a note written in careful cursive, "So you'll always have a home." David hugged her so tightly she could barely breathe, whispering, "You're the best mom in the world." Monica's eyes filled with tears, or at least they looked like tears, as she said, "I'll take care of him, and of you." For a while, it felt like she meant it. Monica helped cook dinner, brought fresh flowers into the kitchen, even accompanied Rosa to the grocery store. She'd sit at the table, chatting about her job at the dental clinic, her plans to make the house look more modern. Rosa was happy to listen. It felt like family, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. Monica started replacing small things, first the curtains, then the old wooden chairs Rosa had kept since the 90s. "They're outdated," she'd say with a laugh. Then came the living room, the kitchen shelves, the family photos. One by one, Rosa's memories disappeared. When Rosa protested, Monica smiled sweetly. "Don't worry, I'm just updating. You'll love it once it's done." But Rosa didn't. The warm beige walls became cold white. The family photos were replaced with abstract art prints Monica found online. Even the scent of cinnamon Rosa loved was gone, replaced by some artificial vanilla diffuser that made the air feel sterile. At dinner, Monica started referring to the house as temporary. "When we move to a bigger place," she'd tell David, "I'll finally have the kitchen I want." Rosa would sit quietly, her fork hovering over her plate, wondering when she had stopped being part of the conversation. What hurt most wasn't the furniture or the walls. It was the slow erasure, the way Monica turned her home into a stage set where Rosa was no longer welcome. The laughter that once filled the house had changed, too. It no longer sounded like family, it sounded like ownership. And Rosa, who had built that home from the dust of her labor, suddenly felt like a guest in her own life. The transformation happened so gradually that at first, Rosa didn't notice. A photo frame missing here, a vase moved there, little things that could be brushed off as accidents. But soon, those small details began to multiply. One morning, she reached for the framed picture of David as a child, the one where he was sitting on her lap, holding a paper star he'd made in kindergarten, and found an empty space on the wall. When she asked Monica, the younger woman smiled innocently. "Oh, it didn't match the decor anymore. I packed it up in the storage closet." The storage closet became a graveyard for Rosa's life. Her late husband's watch, the old record player that still worked, even the lace curtains she had sewn by hand, all gone. The living room that once held warmth and memory now looked like something out of a furniture catalog. Neat, impersonal, cold. When Rosa's friends came to visit one Sunday, Monica met them at the door, smile flawless. "Oh, Rosa's resting today," she said sweetly. "She's been so tired lately. Maybe come another time." Her friends never made it past the porch. From that day on, the calls stopped coming. The house grew quieter, emptier, until even Rosa's laughter began to sound foreign to her own ears. The change reached its peak when Monica's parents came to stay for the weekend. Rosa had cooked a small meal, simple but made with care, enchiladas, beans, and her special arroz con leche. When she brought the dishes to the table, Monica gently took the serving spoon from her hand. "It's fine, Rosa. I've already handled dinner." She replaced Rosa's food with store-bought catering, set out fancy plates, and rearranged the table as though Rosa's effort had never existed. That evening, as they sat around the table, Monica's mother looked around the room, admiring the crisp white curtains, the modern rug, the sleek chrome fixtures. "Your house looks lovely, dear," she said. Monica smiled gracefully and replied, "Thank you." Rosa froze, her hand tightening around her glass of water. "Not our house. Your house." The words cut through her like glass. David said nothing. He just shifted in his seat, pretending not to hear. Later that night, when the guests had gone to bed and the house had settled into silence, Rosa passed by the kitchen on her way to her room. That's when she heard Monica's voice, low, careful, coming from the living room. She was on the phone. "We're almost there, Mom," Monica whispered. "Just a bit more pressure and she'll move out. I told you she's stubborn, but she's getting tired. It's only a matter of time." The words hit Rosa like a slap. She stood frozen in the dark hallway, her heart pounding so loud she was sure it would give her away. Every muscle in her body wanted to confront Monica, to demand an explanation. But her instincts told her to stay quiet. She took a slow breath, turned away, and went back to her room. In the soft glow of her bedside lamp, Rosa sat on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling. She finally saw it, the pattern she'd refused to acknowledge. Every missing photograph, every small humiliation, every polite insult had been part of something larger. A plan. She wasn't just being pushed aside, she was being erased. That night, Rosa didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of floorboards above her. The walls that once felt like protection now pressed in like strangers. By morning, she had made a quiet promise to herself. She wouldn't let them take everything. Not her house, not her dignity, not without a fight. It was a warm August morning when the phone rang, slicing through the stillness of Rosa's kitchen. The clock on the wall read 8:27 a.m. She had just poured herself a cup of coffee when she picked up the receiver, her voice still groggy from sleep. "Mrs. Alvarez." The voice on the other end was calm and professional. "My name is Victor Estrada. I'm calling from Houston regarding your brother, Antonio Morales." Rosa's fingers tightened around the phone. "Antonio," she whispered. "Is he all right?" There was a pause, the kind of silence that tells you everything before the words arrive. "I'm very sorry, ma'am. Your brother passed away last week. I've been handling his estate. He mentioned you several times in his will." For a moment, Rosa couldn't speak. The kitchen seemed to tilt slightly. Antonio, her big brother, the one who used to sneak her candy when they were children, the one who called her every Christmas, no matter how busy he was, gone. Victor's voice softened. He left behind some assets, mainly savings and a small property that was sold recently. After fees and taxes, the amount that goes to you totals $340,000. He wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of. Rosa pressed her hand to her chest, eyes filling with tears. "I don't care about the money," she said quietly. "He was my only family left." They talked for a few more minutes about legal paperwork and mailing addresses, but Rosa barely heard any of it. Her thoughts were with Antonio, his laughter, the way he used to tease her about overworking. The postcards he sent from Texas with scrawled messages like, "Don't forget to rest, little sister." When she hung up, she sat at the kitchen table for a long time, her coffee cold, tears slipping down her cheeks. What she didn't know was that someone else had been listening. From the hallway, just beyond the doorway, Monica had stood silently, phone in hand, pretending to scroll through messages. The moment Rosa hung up, Monica's mind began to spin. $340,000. She could almost taste it, the freedom, the new house, the lifestyle she'd always wanted but never earned. The next morning, Rosa woke to the smell of bacon and fresh coffee. Monica was in the kitchen, smiling warmly. "Good morning. I thought I'd cook for us today. You've been so quiet lately, everything okay?" Rosa was surprised but touched. "I'm fine, dear. Just tired." Monica nodded sympathetically. "David told me you got some sad news. I'm so sorry about your brother." She placed a comforting hand on Rosa's shoulder. "He sounded like a wonderful man." Rosa's throat tightened. He took care of everyone." "Well," Monica said softly, "it's your turn to be taken care of now. You've worked your whole life. Maybe you should think about resting a bit, travel, relax. Enjoy what you've earned. That day marked the beginning of Monica's transformation. From distant and dismissive to kind and attentive, she started doing Rosa's laundry, cooking her favorite dishes, even driving her to church. She spoke about family investments, about how they could use some of Rosa's inheritance to build something meaningful together. Imagine, Monica said one evening, her tone honeyed, a college fund for your future grandkids. You'd be helping them start life without worries. Isn't that what every grandmother wants? Rosa smiled faintly, her heart softening. It felt good to be seen again, to be included. For the first time in months, dinner conversations were warm, filled with laughter that sounded almost genuine. What Rosa couldn't see, was the flicker of calculation in Monica's eyes whenever she talked about the future. Every kind gesture was a move in a quiet, ruthless game. And as Rosa leaned back in her chair, feeling grateful for this sudden harmony, Monica was already building her next step, one that would turn kindness into control and love into leverage. The night it happened, Fresno was wrapped in silence. The streets outside were empty, a single streetlight flickering across the front yard. Rosa had gone to bed early, her body aching from another long day. But sometime after midnight, she woke with a dry throat and went to the kitchen for water. The old clock above the stove ticked softly, 12:47 a.m. As she reached for a glass, she heard a faint sound, a voice, hushed but sharp, coming from the living room. Monica's voice. Rosa froze, her hand still hovering over the sink. She leaned closer to the doorway. The glow of Monica's phone lit her face, her expression smooth and cold as she whispered, "The old lady fell right into the trap, Mom. You were right." She signed the papers without even realizing what they were. Rosa's heart skipped. Papers? Monica laughed quietly, a soft, cruel sound. "Soon the house will be under David's name. I'm already collecting proof." She's losing her mind. She forgets things all the time. I just make sure people notice. Her little confusion at church? Perfect. I told Mrs. Hayes. She almost left the oven on again. Rosa pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. She had never left the oven on. Monica was inventing it, planting stories. Monica's tone lowered, conspiratorial. "I've been slipping a bit of her sleep medication into her coffee, just half a pill. Makes her drowsy and forgetful." David's starting to believe it too. Once we get the doctor to confirm early cognitive decline, she won't have a chance to contest the transfer. The world seemed to narrow to the sound of those words. Rosa's pulse hammered in her ears, her knees weak. The floor felt unsteady beneath her bare feet. She clutched the counter for balance, fighting the urge to storm in and scream. But then another voice joined in, David's. From the hallway, low and tense. "Let's do it fast before she changes her mind. I don't want this dragging out." Rosa's breath caught in her throat. Her son, her only son. Monica's voice softened. "Don't worry. It'll all be clean. By the time she realizes what happened, the house will already be in your name. And honestly, David, she should be in a care facility anyway. You'll be doing her a favor." David sighed. "Yeah, maybe." Something inside Rosa cracked. Not like glass, like bone. The kind of break that doesn't heal cleanly. She backed away quietly, step by careful step, her mind spinning. She slipped into her room, closed the door, and leaned against it, shaking so hard she could barely breathe. For a long time, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring into the darkness. Her hands trembled in her lap, the enormity of what she had just heard sinking in. The deceit, the planning, the betrayal from the two people she had loved most. Her first thought was denial. No, they wouldn't. Not David. But the words had been clear. She replayed them in her head, every syllable like a nail. The house will be under David's name. She's losing her mind. Tears filled her eyes. But she didn't let them fall. Not this time. Something else rose in their place, a cold, deliberate stillness. She realized, in that unbearable silence, that love alone couldn't save her. Not anymore. Rosa had spent her life forgiving the husband who left, the bosses who underpaid her, even Monica's small humiliations. But this was different. This wasn't ignorance or cruelty born of youth. This was a plan, a theft wrapped in affection. She turned off the lamp, sat in the dark, and stared at the faint outline of the door. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was a whisper meant only for herself. "They think I'm weak," she said softly. "They have no idea who they're dealing with." For the first time in months, Rosa didn't feel confused. She didn't feel old. She felt awake. By sunrise, Rosa had already decided how the next act of her life would play out. She sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she didn't drink. Her face was calm, almost serene, though inside her pulse thrummed with a quiet, controlled fury. When Monica walked in, hair neat, smile polished, Rosa looked up with a kind of gentle confusion that had once made her seem fragile. "Monica," she began softly, her voice shaky in just the right way. "I was thinking, maybe it's time I put the house under David's name. You've both been so good to me. It's only fair." Monica froze for a second, then quickly masked her surprise with a practiced smile. "Oh, Rosa, that's very sweet of you. You don't have to do that." Rosa tilted her head slightly, feigning uncertainty. "Well, maybe I should. I don't want things to get complicated later." That was all it took. The gleam in Monica's eyes returned, sharp, hungry, and confident. "I can help with that," she said quickly. "My cousin Javier is a notary. He can handle the paperwork for free." Rosa smiled faintly. "That sounds perfect, dear. I trust you." The words tasted bitter, but she spoke them smoothly. As Monica grabbed her phone to make the call, Rosa noticed her tone. Bright, eager, triumphant. "Hey, Javier. Remember the papers I mentioned? We're ready." "Yes. Today." Rosa waited until Monica and David left for the afternoon to prepare the transfer. The moment their car pulled away from the driveway, she went next door and knocked on Patricia Torres's door. Patricia, a retired teacher with silver hair and eyes sharp as glass, opened the door, worry already written across her face. "You look pale, Rosa. What's wrong?" Rosa stepped inside, lowered her voice, and told her everything. The conversation she'd overheard. The plan, the drugs, the forged documents. Patricia listened in silence, her jaw tightening with each word. "We'll handle this smart," Patricia said finally. "No yelling. No fighting. You'll give them enough rope to hang themselves." Together they began setting up. Patricia brought out a small box of digital recorders her nephew had once used for interviews. They placed one under the kitchen table, another behind the framed painting in the living room, and a third beside the telephone. Patricia even installed a voice-activated recorder in the hallway vent, invisible but deadly effective. That evening, Rosa rehearsed her role. She shuffled her steps, spoke slower, occasionally forgot small things like where she'd left her keys or what day it was. Monica noticed and smiled. "You see, David? It's starting," she whispered when she thought Rosa couldn't hear. Perfect timing. Rosa heard every word. In the following days, she visited 3 lawyers under the guise of preparing her will. Each meeting was quiet, deliberate, and professional. She learned everything she needed: how to document elder abuse, how to prove fraud, how to secure legal protection without alerting anyone. Each night, Rosa reviewed the recordings with Patricia, noting every incriminating phrase. Each morning, she brewed coffee with trembling hands, not from fear but from restraint. To Monica, she looked like a frail woman slipping into forgetfulness. But behind those tired eyes, Rosa was rebuilding her power piece by piece. By the end of the week, She had everything she needed: proof, allies, and a plan. The woman they thought was helpless was no longer a victim. She was waiting, and she was patient. The morning Rosa announced her trip, the sun spilled gently through the lace curtains, soft and golden. She sat at the breakfast table, her suitcase already packed beside her. "I'll be heading to Bakersfield for a couple of weeks," she said casually, stirring her tea. "My cousin Louisa isn't feeling well, and I'd like to help her around the house. I'll be back before the end of the month." Monica looked up from her phone, blinking in surprise. 2 weeks? That's sudden. Rosa smiled faintly. "You've both been so helpful lately. I trust you to take care of the house while I'm gone." David hesitated. "Are you sure you don't want us to drive you?" "Oh, no need," Rosa replied, waving her hand. "Patricia's nephew is passing through town and offered to drop me off." It was a lie, but one delivered with such calm certainty that neither of them questioned it. By noon, she rolled her small suitcase out the door, waved goodbye, and disappeared down the street. From the living room window, Monica watched her leave, the corner of her mouth curling in satisfaction. But Rosa didn't head to Bakersfield. Instead, she drove her aging Corolla across town to the Sunset Inn Motel, a modest, low-rise building tucked beside Highway 99. She paid for 2 weeks in cash. Waiting in the parking lot was a man in his late 50s with sharp eyes and a detective's stillness. Daniel Cortez, a retired sheriff's deputy, now working as a private investigator. Rosa handed him a small notebook filled with details: Monica's full name, her job, her cousin, Javier the notary, and every suspicious thing she'd overheard in the past month. Daniel listened silently, flipping through the notes. When she finished, he nodded once. "We'll get what we need," he said, quietly. That afternoon, Daniel parked a maintenance van near Rosa's house under the pretense of fixing the gutters. While Monica and David were at work, he entered using the spare key Rosa had left him and installed discrete cameras and microphones, one in the kitchen light fixture, another in the living room vent, and a third in the home office where Monica kept her documents. Each was connected to a remote feed Rosa could access from her motel room. The following days were a study in human greed. Rosa sat on the edge of her motel bed, headphones on, watching the people she had loved most reveal their true faces. On the second day, Monica came home early, phone pressed to her ear. "Javier, we're good to go," she said. She left everything open. "I've forged her signature before. It's easy. Just print the new deed with David's name, and I'll bring it tomorrow." Rosa froze. The words echoed in her ears, each one like a blade. 2 days later, a real estate agent arrived, a stranger in a crisp suit and sunglasses. Rosa watched through the feed as Monica led him through the house, pointing at walls and cabinets, talking about market value and potential buyers. The agent jotted notes, unaware that every word was being recorded. At night, Daniel stopped by the motel to deliver backup drives of the footage. Together, they reviewed the videos, cataloging every lie, every signature, every phone call. By the end of the second week, Rosa had everything: proof of forgery, fraud, and manipulation, all sealed in neat digital folders labeled Evidence, Alvarez Case. As she sat by the motel window that last night, watching the glow of the highway lights flicker across her hands, Rosa felt something she hadn't in months: control. For the first time since this nightmare began, she wasn't scared. She was ready. The trap they'd built for her had become her weapon. On the morning of October 25th, the air in Fresno was sharp and dry, the kind of autumn day when the sky seemed too clear to hold any secrets. Rosa stood at the edge of her front walkway, suitcase in hand, staring at the door of the home she had built with 40 years of sweat and sacrifice. The brass lock glinted in the sunlight, new again. Her heart beat steady, calm, almost eerily so. She had expected this. She rang the doorbell. Moments later, The sound of heels clicked against the hardwood inside. The door swung open, and Monica appeared, her hair perfectly styled. Her expression caught somewhere between annoyance and victory. "Oh," she said coolly, her lips curling. "You're back early. I thought you were visiting family until next week." Rosa didn't move. Her voice was quiet, steady. "I miss my home." Monica leaned against the frame, feigning sympathy. "I told you, Rosa, it's not safe for you to be alone here anymore. David and I talked about it. This arrangement just isn't working." "Arrangement?" Rosa repeated, her tone almost curious. Before Monica could answer, David appeared behind her. He looked tired, his eyes hollow, his jaw tight. "Mom," he started, "let's just talk calmly." "Okay." Rosa nodded slowly. "Yes," she said, her voice turning firm. "Let's talk. Outside. In the yard." Monica frowned, but Rosa didn't wait for an answer. She walked past them, her small frame cutting through the doorway with surprising strength. The backyard looked exactly as she remembered, the faded lawn chairs, the fig tree she'd planted when David was 10, the worn patio stones that had once held birthday balloons. When they stepped outside, Rosa gestured to the chairs. "Sit down." Monica crossed her arms. "There's nothing to discuss." Rosa ignored her, pulling her phone from her handbag. "You're right. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to play something." She tapped the screen. A second later, a familiar voice filled the quiet yard. Monica's voice, crisp and unmistakable. "Once she's declared incompetent, we'll sell the house. David's name will already be on the papers. She won't even realize it." The words hung in the air like smoke. David's face drained of color. What is that?" he stammered. Rosa's gaze never wavered. "That's your wife, talking to her mother. The night I was supposed to be asleep." Monica's composure cracked. "This is insane. You're twisting things. Someone's edited that." Rosa pressed another button. The next recording began, this one quieter, but colder. "I've been slipping her medication into her coffee, just half a pill. Makes her forget things. Once we get the doctor to confirm early dementia, it'll be easy." Rosa watched Monica's face crumble, the color draining from her cheeks. David took a step back, staring at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. "Tell me that's not your voice," he said, voice trembling. Monica's lips parted, but no words came out. Rosa reached into her purse and placed a small flash drive on the table between them. "There's more," she said softly. "Video footage, phone calls, the notary meeting. All of it recorded." Monica's hands shook. How did you?" Rosa finally smiled. It wasn't cruel. It was the kind of smile born from endurance. "I never left Fresno," she said. "I recorded everything." The silence that followed was heavy, the kind that pressed on the lungs. David looked at his mother, truly looked at her, and saw not the frail woman he had dismissed, but the strength that had carried him his whole life. Monica, meanwhile, stood frozen, her mask stripped away. For the first time, she was the one who didn't know what to say. Rosa slipped her phone back into her bag. "I trusted both of you," she said quietly, "and you used that trust to destroy me. But you forgot one thing. I built this house with my own hands. Every inch of it knows me. You were just visitors." David's eyes welled with tears, but Rosa didn't wait for him to speak. She turned toward the house, pausing at the doorway. "You wanted me gone," she said softly. "Now it's your turn to leave." And as she stepped inside, the same floorboards that once felt like prison now felt like freedom. Rosa didn't wait long after the confrontation. The moment she closed the door behind her, she reached into her bag, found Victor Estrada's business card, and dialed the number with a steady hand. Her voice, when he answered, was calm but resolute. "Mr. Estrada," she said, "it's time." Within half an hour, the sound of 2 police cruisers rolled quietly to a stop in front of the Alvarez house. The flashing blue lights, painted the white siding in soft pulses, mixing with the amber glow of the street lamp. Victor Estrada stepped out of his silver sedan, followed by Patricia Torres, her expression stern and protective. Rosa met them at the front steps. Inside, Monica was pacing the living room, whispering frantically to David, who looked pale and lost. When the knock came, Monica straightened, smoothing her hair as if appearances could still save her. She opened the door and froze. "Mrs. Monica Delgado Alvarez," the officer said, his tone professional, almost detached. "You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and conspiracy." For a second, Monica's mask shattered. "What? No. This is ridiculous." Victor stepped forward, his face composed but cold. "We have sufficient evidence, audio, video, and signed witness statements. Everything you and your cousin discussed, every attempt to falsify signatures, every call to the notary, all recorded." Patricia stood beside Rosa, her eyes locked on Monica. "You should have left her alone," she said softly. David's voice cracked. "Mom, please don't do this." "I didn't know she," Rosa cut him off gently. "You knew enough, David. You heard what she said and stayed silent. That's enough." Her voice wasn't angry. It was weary, like a door finally closing after too many years left open. The officers stepped forward, reading Monica her rights as they cuffed her. The metallic click of the handcuffs echoed through the room, sharp and final. David tried to follow, but another officer stopped him. "Mr. Alvarez, you're coming with us, too." He looked at Rosa, his eyes full of panic. "Mom, please." "I didn't mean," Rosa met his gaze. "You didn't stop her," she said simply. "And that's the same thing." As they were led outside, the neighbors peeked through their curtains. Patricia placed a gentle hand on Rosa's shoulder. "It's over," she whispered. But Rosa knew it wasn't, not yet. Justice takes time. 6 months later, the Fresno County Courthouse was packed. Rosa sat quietly beside Victor, her hands folded in her lap as the judge read the verdict. Monica sat at the defense table, her once pristine posture gone, her hair tied back in a messy bun. David sat beside her, head bowed. The charges were read aloud one by one: fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and criminal conspiracy. The courtroom was silent except for the hum of the ceiling fan. When the sentences came, Rosa didn't move. Monica, 22 years. David, 18. Restitution and forfeiture of property were ordered immediately. The house was returned to Rosa, along with $150,000 in compensation for emotional and financial damages. Monica gasped, her voice trembling as the bailiffs led her away. David tried to turn toward his mother, but Rosa kept her gaze forward. There was nothing left to say. After the trial, Victor walked her out of the courthouse into the cool spring air. "You handled yourself with grace," he told her. "Most people would have let anger destroy them." Rosa smiled faintly. "I had enough years of anger. I chose peace instead." She sold the house a month later. Too many memories lingered there, both sweet and poisoned. With the restitution money, she bought a small cottage just outside Fresno, in a quiet neighborhood where the air smelled of eucalyptus and the nights were filled with crickets. Patricia lived just 2 doors down, and they shared coffee every morning on matching porches, laughing softly like 2 women who had seen too much but survived anyway. Inside her new home, Rosa kept very few things from the past. One was a small photograph of David as a child, smiling with his front teeth missing. She placed it on her nightstand beside a vase of fresh flowers. Every night before bed, she'd look at it and whisper, "I didn't do this for revenge. I did it for respect." The house itself was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful, lived in, secure hers. Some evenings, she'd sit by the window watching the sun sink behind the almond fields, the horizon bathed in orange and gold. The city lights of Fresno glimmered faintly in the distance. like the life she'd left behind, a life of endurance, betrayal, and finally dignity. As the wind brushed through the open window and the scent of jasmine drifted in, Rosa felt the stillness she had longed for. She hadn't just reclaimed her house. She had reclaimed herself. She hadn't lost her family. She had reclaimed her soul, and with it her peace.